All right, let's try it like this. Okay. Hey, everybody. Give me 1 second. I just want to take a sip of my coffee. Oh, yeah. I'm a coffee drinker. Coffee's a beautiful thing. So, hello, everyone in internet land, social media land, YouTube land, Instagram land, Facebook land, all the other lands. How you guys doing? I want to introduce myself, tell you who I am and what I do. So, my name is Andrew Murphy. All my friends call me Drew. I am a certified personal development and self-worth coach. Now, what does that mean? We'll get to that. And then there's another video after this one that explains exactly my company, Clarity Coaching and Consulting, what we do, how we do it, and, our goal, all right, which is basically to help people, with their self-worth and help them grow their own personal business, or help them just basically grow as people, and help them work on developing themselves as better individuals. That's my goal. Now, there's a whole bunch of people that are doing this on the internet, and they're basically fake. They're basically, gurus or whatever you want to call it, but they're just doing it for the clicks and the clout and the likes and the money and whatever else. That's not me. I'm a legitimate, certified personal development coach. Something I want to do. So let's get into it a little bit. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm not going to take you the whole life story, but I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and the other video will be a little bit more about my company. So I was born in America, born in Los Angeles, grew up on the East Coast. Grew up in, I would say New York is like where I kind of grew up, lived in DC for a while. But mostly living in New York was what made me be, grow up here, if you will. Anyway, traveled all throughout the United States, Florida, North Carolina, you name a state, I've probably been there. When I was little, my mother's from the West Coast and my dad's from the East Coast. And so when we were little, my mom would take us on the train ride across the country to visit, her family. Now, this is in the 1900s, okay? So the train rides it was amazing. It was an amazing time, and I really fell in love with the train. So because of that, when I got older, I started taking the train to different places and going to, traveling the country. So long story short, how did I end up where I am now? I currently live in Stockholm, Sweden. I am married, and I have my own business as like I said, a personal development coach, working on building up my business. And how did I get there? Well, like I said, I was living in America, going back and forth from East Coast to West Coast, right? And the last time I went to the West Coast from the East Coast, I met my children's mother, my ex. We got together. Long story. I'm not going to go into the stories because it's a lot. But I'll just give you the, long story short version. So we met, we hung out, things worked out. One thing led to another. We went back to the east. It didn't work out. We went back to the west. Things started happening. I was one of those guys that was kind of, just growing up, getting in and out of trouble all the time, in and out of trouble all the time, always out there in them streets. And because of that, I had a lot of things, a lot of lessons I had to learn the hard way. Anyway, so we were hanging out in LA, and like I said, I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out in the streets, fucking around, and she got pregnant. And when she got pregnant, I was like, okay, I'm not going to raise my kids the way I grew up, right? I'm not going to have them living in poverty. I'm not going to have them, all this street life shit and all of this shit basically is what it is. I'm not going to do that with my kids. I'm going to break the cycle, because growing up, all of my friends, I grew up with a father and a mother, but I was the only one of my friends in my friend group that grew up with a mother and a father. Most of my friends didn't have a father, right? And those of you that were born in the 1900s on the East Coast or even on the West Coast in the ghettos of America, you know what I'm talking about. If you know, you know. So I was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. That's not what we're doing. So I said, okay, if I'm going to raise my kid and do it not from a jail cell, then I need to do something. So what did I do? I told my ex, I said, hey, why don't we move to your country? She was from Sweden. We met in Venice Beach when I was hanging out in Venice Beach. Like I said, we clicked, whatever. And I was like, hey, you're pregnant. Why don't we move to Sweden? She didn't want to go. You know, she was from there and she moved to LA. She was living in LA, liking living in America. She didn't want to go. So I kept, chatting on her and, kept nagging her about it. And a couple of things happened, like some really serious, violent events happened. I won't go into it. I can laugh about it now, and I won't go into it. But one of those things that happened, and she was there, right? She was actually, present, having to, get involved, and that kind of, I think that's what made her say, yeah, okay, maybe it's probably a good idea for us to get up out of here. So we had Jasmine, my oldest daughter, and Jasmine was born on the 23rd of November, 1997. On the 8th of July, 1998, I was in Sweden. Now, she's from the northern part of Sweden, and she was like, she made me promise that if we moved to Sweden, number one, we were only going to stay about a year or so to see if it worked. If not, we were going to come back. Number two, she didn't want to live, where she grew up at. It's a very small town, and, she's not a small town girl, even though that's where she came from. She's done a lot of traveling, speaks a lot of languages, whatever. So she didn't want to live there. But when we moved here to Sweden, we had to start somewhere, right? And it's good to start someplace where you have a base, and she had her family there, so we could start, live with her family, build up, get her own place, and, stepping stones. So that's what we did. Lived in the small town where she was from, moved to a little bigger town. The idea was to move to Stockholm, where I live now, but it never happened. One thing led to another, and we had another kid, and the kids grew up, they got grown. She and I separated, and I started traveling. Long story short, how did I end up in Stockholm? Well, I was working in Norway as an assistant nurse. So I got my certification as an assistant nurse and as a chef. The idea to have two was that I'd always have a job and I'd never be unemployed, right? And up until now, that's been, that's pretty much been the thing. I've always had work. So I was living in Norway working as an assistant nurse, and the pandemic hit. When the pandemic hit, they needed people here in Stockholm at one of the hospitals to work at a emergency corona. They call it in Swedish, they call it avdelningen, but in English it's called a ward. So it was they had a special division, a special floor, like the whole floor was dedicated to helping, the acute emergency patients, corona patients. So because I have emergency medical certification, and because I have psychiatric emergency and psychiatric medical education, I'm certified in both. I got the job because you need to use psychiatry or psychology with the patients and with their, with their family and whatever else. And you also have to, use the emergency side of it as well. I love the job. It's a very rough job, and I love working in the hospitals. I love working in emergency healthcare. I was going to do the ambulance. Well, I did the ambulance thing for a while. I loved it, but it's very taxing on your body, not just physically, but up here. It's you really got to put your emotions to the side, right? So I did that for a while. When the job was up, I started working in other places, different, healthcare facilities, working with healthcare. And then, but after Corona, I got burnt out with healthcare. It was because of what was going on with helping these patients. They die. You help them, they die. You help them, they die. It was just back and forth. It was nonstop. And because of that, it took a lot out of me. Excuse me. It took a lot out of me emotionally working with people, like working with helping people. And before the Corona thing, I've worked, like I said, did ambulance work and everything else. So I've seen car accidents. I've seen people die. I've seen, kids die. I've seen, children that were abused. And I've seen a lot, right? We're not going to go into that, but I'm just saying. So I had the tough exterior, but Corona took it all out of me. So that's why I started doing other things. Long story short, I was living in Stockholm, and about a year or so after I lived in Stockholm, I met my wife, the woman I'm married to now. Now, I can do a whole video series on my wife and how wonderful and beautiful she is and how much I love her and how great and grateful I am to her. And I am great in my life now because of her, right? I'm good at what I do and I am who I am because I could do, we can go on and on and on and on and on to the break of dawn, right, about her. But that's not what we're here for. Shout out to Karina. I love you, baby. But anyway, we met and, we hooked up, whatever. And I wasn't ready, but then I was. And you know how it is, guys. You meet a good woman and if you're not ready, it scares you to death. Long story short, we got married and we lived together. Now we live here in Stockholm. I live in a nice area of Stockholm, really cool area. Love Stockholm. I love living in Stockholm. The only thing about Sweden that I don't like is the weather. And I'll be doing some videos about, living here and being black living here. And, it's not what you think, trust me. And I'll do some videos and let you guys see a few things. But I said, okay, what am I really going to do? I like working in healthcare. I like being a chef. What am I really going to do? And she took me to an event. There was an event by a guy named Tigran Inanyan. He's a personal development, self-worth coach. Pretty cool guy. And she told me about it. I was like, I don't know. It costs like, I don't know, a couple $100, whatever, for the event. And I was like, I don't know. That sounds like hocus pocus bullshit. That sounds like some fake, scam. You guys know how it is. Here I am on YouTube right now telling you who I am and telling you that I'm also a coach. Some of you out there right now looking at me thinking, oh, he's a scam. Of course, I understand. I do. I get it. Trust me. So I was like, I don't know. It's a scam. It's all bullshit. She's like, no. We got to check it out at least. I said, okay. So we went. Boom. It hit me. We went and it was, I think it was a 3-day event. I think it was like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I think. I'm not sure. I remember. And during that event, it just hit me, because I've always liked working with people, right? I've worked with chemical dependency. I've worked, like I said, with emergency healthcare. I've worked with psychiatry. I've worked with the criminally insane. I've worked with, mentally disabled people or retarded people, I guess is what they call, whatever it is. I've worked with a lot of different people in various different, aspects. And I've always enjoyed it, right? But this hit different. I was like, wait, coaching? I could actually be a coach. I mean, I thought it was BS before, but you know what? I could actually do that. And then my creative mind took over and I started having all these ideas of how I was going to do it and blah, 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 blah. So then because of that, long story short, I got started and I opened up my company and I didn't know anything about opening a company, had no idea about starting a company, had no idea about, I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but it was a rough idea, right? I didn't really know, I couldn't hone in on the specific genre of people that I was going to help. I had no idea, right? So trial and error, in and out, failure, setback, win, whatever. I finally, took some time and I finally figured it out. And I was like, okay. So I took like about 2 years or so and really worked on myself. Because you can't help anybody if you haven't worked on yourself. So I worked on myself and then I started working on my craft and really learning. I got certified. So I am a certified personal development self-worth coach. Okay, certified. And then I was like, okay, let's start this business, but let's change it. So I had a company. The name of my company now is Clarity Coaching and Consulting. Okay, it's formerly known as Level Up Coaching and Consulting. When I had Level Up Coaching and Consulting, it was going in a certain direction. After time and life and experiences and things like that, it started to take a shift. And I was like, okay, let's pivot and let's do it this way instead, right? Because when things don't work, you can't just shut down shop and feel bad about it. You gotta pivot. You're like, okay, that didn't work. What do I do? Okay, let's try this. You know what I mean? And so that's what I did. And that's where I am today. This is my second attempt at the whole YouTube thing, starting a YouTube channel. Because I had a YouTube channel for Level Up Coaching, but it didn't really work out and, I didn't know how to do it and blah, 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 blah. But now I'm here. Now I know what I'm doing. And now I'm out here as a personal development coach, helping people get really serious about their personal development, understanding that they have to do the work themselves and go after those goals after learning about their own self-worth and building up their self-worth, right? So thank you for your time. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. The next one, like I said, will be more about the company and, you know, what we do. And every week I will put up a video on this channel about sort of like a webinar, okay? Some of the videos will be about myself and my journey and things that are going on. And other videos will be about, you know, I'll do webinars about, you know, self-worth webinars like discipline, resilience, you know, setbacks, how to cope with frustration, things like that, all right? So I'm looking forward to putting these videos up, and I am looking forward to you guys checking them out, commenting below. If you're interested and you have any ideas, or you know, about, like, if you're interested and you want to know more about me and you want to know more about my coaching, and if I can help you, then feel free to leave a comment below, and we'll connect. All right? You guys take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video.